This is the northern extremity of the mine. So what you can observe here is the benching that's taken place to stabilise the rock face. What we've done, it's been coming in for so many years, it's almost everything. So what the miners did during the 50s to the 70s was to excavate using the bedding planes of the original sedimentary layers, which have been folded and tilted up so that they're dipping into the ground at a very steep angle. And the veins that they were chasing down into the ground were covered probably several metres on the top with weathered material, so that wasn't the highest grade ore. So what they did was they stripped off the top of these two hills, three hills actually, and dumped that material. Behind those trees is the northern dump of overburden, and over there is the southern dump of the overburden. But that still contains sulfide mineralisation, and the problem with that is being broken up, it presents new surfaces for chemical reactions to happen with the oxygen from the atmosphere and water from the rain. Okay, so that accounts for 8.5 million tonnes of rubble, which makes the two overburden piles, and that also accounts for probably in the order of the high 90s percentages of the acid production source. The southern rock, even though it's got exposed veins of sulfide mineralisations, because it's very well compacted and cemented together, the only places where the water can get through and generate a chemical reaction to make the acid is the cracks that you see in there, which are a combination of bedding plane cracks of the original sedimentary layers and what we call joints, which are where the sedimentary rocks have cracked but not slipped to make a fault. So those cracks go in various directions depending on where the forces were operating from. A bit like if you take several slices of bread which has gone a little bit dry and stale and you try to bend them, they tend to crack along the axis of the fault. Okay, so this used to be the working bench, and behind us, where you see the pale coloured rocks, they are the veins of the sulfides going down into the ground. Okay, so that's what they were chasing. And if you look back where we came from with the bus, you'll see the 7 pyramids that I talked about in the lecture presentation that I did last week, and they were for the purposes of doing a large-scale set of trials to see what works best in neutralising the acid-forming materials, either by capping these things with alkali or by mixing it in various grain-size proportions with the actual rubble. And the field trials that we had there, each pyramid represents 1,000 tonnes of rock, which is taken from one of the rubble piles and mixed to make it representative of the general composition of the mining area. And it was found that the ones that were capped with oxides or with alkali of calcium carbonate, like limestone, they started slow, and then they picked up in their effectiveness in dealing with the acidic effluent that was coming out, as compared to the other ones further along, which were a mix of the alkali and the rubble, and that couldn't be regenerated after, because it means rehandling stuff continually. And the effectiveness of those started out being really good initially, and then it started to peter out only over the space of 18 months. So you wouldn't want to spend your $26 million rehabilitating the whole mine and then finding 18 months later that the problem is still there. Okay, so that's why it's so important to be considered and careful by actually doing observations with experiments, because assumptions are usually based on previous experience. Previous experience doesn't necessarily have all the same parameters that you're dealing with in your current situation, so you need to be able to identify all those things before you go ahead with your final sort of plan. Any questions? Okay, this gets used by Staff Force to do practice for rescue operations on the cliff face. It's used to doing movies and all sorts of other things.
Did anyone see the film last year called Road Train? Low-grade horror film. Yeah. Filmed here.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah. So you'll see pictures of that rock face there and several shots of that. But it was also partly shot in Northern Territory. Okay, so we'll go down to the bottom and have a look at where the clean water is reintroduced back into the Dorsley Creek, and also have a look at the sump area where the water is collected and pumped across the road. But we're running out of time rapidly, so we're going to have to move. Okay?
Do it, people.